despite the fact that I play video games rather frequently, I was unable to get a PlayStation 5. I was looking for a good deal, so I checked Craigslist. Since it was on sale, I decided to purchase one. Cam responded to my ad within 1 hour of its posting. Following a few brief conversations, we agreed to conduct the trade at a Walmart located in close proximity to my home. My hesitation about meeting someone I'd only known on the internet was eased by the possibility of winning a PlayStation 5. I went there on foot and looked throughout the parking lot for Cam. I had a strong feeling that I could recognize him from the grainy email photo that we had sent. I entertained myself by walking around the parking lot while playing on my phone. After that, he showed up. A tall, broad-shouldered individual who was covered in tattoos. It appeared that he had been released from custody. I felt anxiety as I got closer to him. "Are you going to purchase a PlayStation?" query. Rough voice. I gave a cautious nod and smiled at her. "I am." "Cam?" He nodded and motioned for me to come closer. "I am." "Follow. I'm going to show you." I accompanied him to his vehicle, which appeared to be in poor condition. I was beginning to feel anxious, but I forced myself to remain composed. Many Craigslist transactions had gone wrong. When I waited by the vehicle, Cam entered through the door on the driver's side. He opened his eyes and looked directly at me. "Enter." I inquired as to whether or not he had it. "It's not up to me." I didn't have time. "Enter." Casually. It was impossible to believe. He didn't want me to ride in his vehicle at all. How is it possible that he does not have time? 2 seconds. I made up a story, turned around, and fled the scene. When I turned around, Cam was nowhere to be seen following me. From behind the wheel of his car, he looked at me. I suspected that he was up to no good, so I considered contacting the authorities. But I did not have anything. While it is not against the law to offer a ride to someone, I had no choice but to let it go. For the next few weeks, I was in need of a job. During my perusing, I came upon an ad on Craigslist. Direct marketing. Just an individual for the day that needs assistance with various home tasks. A day's worth of labor was preferable than having done nothing. Even though it wasn't much, it was enough to cover my bills for a few days. To my utter surprise, the advertisement received a response within a matter of minutes. Ari, the person who called, provided me with his address. After the refinishing work was completed, he wanted someone to clean up the mess. I anticipated that the contractors would clean up, but it's possible that they won't. The following morning, I rode my bike to Terry's house, which was a modest brick structure with 2 stories and was located in a peaceful area. I waited as I rang the doorbell many times. When the door opened, Terry gave me a friendly smile. Middle-aged, bald, and beer-bellied. The pants and white shirt he was wearing were both damaged. He said good morning as he moved aside to make room for me to enter. As I entered his living room, I greeted him with good morning. The room was brightly lit thanks to the light blue walls and the large brown sofa. The couch comes with a coffee table that is stacked with periodicals. There was no construction taking place. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I thought maybe it was in the next room. Terry showed me the back of the house when we went back there. The kitchen served as our point of entry into the garden shed. As soon as Terry opened the door, I noticed that the shelves were stocked with various tools and paint cans. "Kindly put this in order and clean it up," pointing towards the shed. "Yes." During the course of an hour, I cleaned out the shed and arranged the tools. After telling her, I walked back to my house to pack. He showed a grin. "I'll demonstrate the actual task to you." He led me down to the basement. The basement was dim since it had a concrete floor and pipes that were exposed. Although there were some containers and a workbench in the corner, there was no building going on. Terry pointed to the nook and asked that the area be cleaned up. Despite the clutter, it shouldn't take too much time. On the corner there was some dust and some old newspapers. It didn't seem proper to sweep and clean at the same time. Terry lurked around the corner and kept an eye on me. While I was sweeping, I accidentally knocked over a box, which caused its contents to fall out. I got down on my knees and grasped them. They were reminiscent of old photographs. I went through my bag and pulled out a handful to place in the box. I was able to spot one photograph. It appeared to be a creepy game of role-playing. Those who were dressed oddly were restrained. I had the want to go away. I was aware that Terry had gone and that the door was closed. Once you reached the top of the stairs, it was locked. "Terry?" yelled. "What's going on?" No response. Panicked. During my quest for an alternative exit, I came across a little window in the ceiling. On the other hand, I could see the outdoors. I had to climb up on some boxes that were stacked underneath the window in order to open it. I hastened to my bike, which was securely locked. When I galloped away, the rush of adrenaline gave me chills. I called the police station that was a few kilometers away. When they went to see Terry at his house, Terry offered an explanation. He said that I was acting strangely when I was cleaning his house. He accused me of being high on drugs and asked me to leave the premises. He stated that I had called the police in an attempt to get back at him. The police were unaware that what they were hearing was gibberish, and there was no evidence that a crime had been committed. It infuriated me, and I was scared that Terry would keep posting advertisements on Craigslist and taking advantage of people who were naive. I was confident that I had already alerted other people, so I decided to publish an ad on Craigslist about him. I went over the situation with you and cautioned you against responding to Terry's advertisement. When I think back, I can't believe how fortunate I was to avoid this disaster. It is highly likely that Terry had bad intentions. Derek, a similar thing occurred to me a year ago, and it was a very scary experience. There was no purpose for my camera. I used to really enjoy photography, but I just couldn't make the time for it anymore. The condition of high-end cameras was excellent. I posted it on Craigslist in order to find a buyer in the immediate area and avoid shipping costs. Answers came soon. Dan sent one. He made a bid of 50% of the original price for my camera. I stated that the offer was demeaning to me. He kept sending daily messages. I kept declining his lowball offers even if they were tempting. I gave in to his reasonable demands and agreed to sell it to him. At a subway stop close to my place of residence, we got together. I was thrilled to finally close the deal and move on. At the metro station where we had agreed to meet, there were 3 men who I saw. They were much taller than I was and they were staring at me. Despite the knot in my stomach, I managed to keep my cool. Dan. Like I was saying, getting closer. "Hey." He smirked. I smiled and nodded at each man, but I could sense that they were evaluating me. I started to feel bad about having met them here. I was at a loss for words to describe the attention, but I reminded myself not to let it frighten me. "Is that the camera?" Dan asked. Nodding, I collected my luggage. As was stated previously, it is in pristine condition. Dan performed an inspection on the camera. He gave it his full attention and investigated it. I noticed a few other men looking at him. Their eyes were flying back and forth from the camera to me the entire time. The camera was finally handed over to me by Dan. "You are paying too much." When he yelled, my heart immediately began to race. I was prepared for this, but I still hoped that he would follow his word. "Sorry about that, but we compromised on the price. That is my all-time low." I felt threatened by the presence of those three men standing over me. I had the impression that arguing would lead to issues. Dan got closer to me in his seat. "Kid, it is courteous of you to offer thus much. Thank you for accepting it in this manner." The feeling of his breath on my face triggered a fit of wrath. How dare he talk to me in such a condescending manner? I took a few steps back and repositioned myself. Absolutely not. Decide. I made a claim. When Dan raised his shirt, which revealed a revolver concealed in his waist, he had a furious expression on his face. Threatened. "You guys just stood there with a stone face." "No." He pointed at me specifically. "You are going to take my money and hand over the camera to me." Terrified. I couldn't decide. A few of the men around me. I sensed their attempt to engage. I was forced to depart. I wouldn't put up with these guys. For 1 second. I was more frightened by Dan's look than I was by the pistol. A moment of insanity passed. A look of hopelessness on their face. I proceeded with caution. Okay. I surrendered. "Please accept money." When they all took a half step back, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. "Good," stated. "You'd realize." I counted the money from the water bill. Even though it was only 1/2 of what we had agreed upon, I had to accept it and then depart. I was sorry that I had to give up the camera. That made me feel absolutely horrible to realize that I'd allowed these individuals to take advantage of me. After the 4 men had gone, I was left without feeling. As I walked home, I had mixed emotions. Disappointment, indignation, and a sense of impending doom. It was hard for me to imagine that some people would put money before everything else. I went back to my apartment to gather my thoughts after the event. The sight of the money on the table offended and humiliated me. While I was sitting there, I just couldn't let it go. Need to take action. I had no choice but to bring charges against those men. I was required to make a defense for myself in order to maintain accountability. I dialed 911. I went into further detail about what occurred. They were attentive and provided clarification. After I had completed everything, the officer assured me that they would assist. They took down my information and said they will get back to me. After several days, police got in touch with me. Dan, along with his friends, as well as the camera, were discovered. But the police have disputed everything, even that Dan would return the camera if I paid for it. It was most likely his intention to make me appear insane. I took it. I was bullied and frightened by a group of people who pretended to be strong. Although it is impossible to prove, in my opinion, they should have been charged with assault for their actions. The footage from the surveillance camera would not have shown anything. It is recommended that this one be left alone. As I already bought and sold other items, I decided to post my used car on Craigslist after purchasing a brand new vehicle the previous year. The subsequent days brought responses to my inquiries. The vast majority were either cons or offers of poor value. In his response, Sal provided the total price that I had requested. It didn't come as a surprise to me because I thought the pricing was reasonable, if not even cheap. You were interested in both viewing it and driving it. Are you available to meet me at the convenience store in my neighborhood? At the convenience store, I saw Sal standing close to a beat-up pickup truck. I had the impression that he was the only one present. He was short and stocky with no hair on his head, but he had a full beard. Although he gave off a sinister vibe, I didn't rush to form an opinion about him. I beckoned him to come over. While Sal was at the wheel, I was able to ride shotgun. As we traveled, I couldn't help but feel anxious. Because Sal struck me as peculiar, I couldn't put my faith in him. When we were driving, he started asking me questions about my car. He seemed to have more knowledge about cars than I did. Even more shocking was the fact that he was willing to pay the whole amount right away. I was taken aback by the fact that he paid that amount without trying to negotiate a lower price. It made me delighted since it indicated that I would be able to get a good deal on an automobile. At the DMZ, we finalized the papers associated with the sale. My excitement was through the roof when Sal presented me with a fully completed cashier's check. When I deposited the check, the teller at the bank gave me a strange look. She addressed her request to her management. They informed me that the check was counterfeit. Unbelievable. Sal is lying. He did not respond to any of my calls or emails. I did not obtain any of his information, nor did I complete the transfer. I seriously doubt that Sal is his true name. I am both disappointed and enraged. I put my faith in an unknown person who took advantage of me. Both my car and my self-respect had been taken away. It was my intention to keep this from my wife. I have always been under the impression that I could spot a con. I never trust apparent ones. It was not the same. Face to face. That doesn't seem risky to me. As I researched it online, I discovered that it is a common scam, and there is no way to get your belongings back. At first, I believed there was a chance that I could find him. This is a lesson that I will never, ever forget.